All right. Hi, my name is Shane Brodie. I'm here in a church basement, and it's pretty great. There's like little kids stuff up on the walls, and there's a train looking thing in the back. Yeah, and there's all kinds of stuff here, and it looks like it's a very well used space, and I like to see that in churches. I'm traveling around the country, interviewing fellow trans and non-binary people about identity and beliefs, that sort of thing. Maybe some current events. Maybe talking about the area that we are in here in New England currently. I traveled through the South and up the coast, and now I'm in New England. And I have a few more people to interview, and then I'm off to the Midwest for a bit. Yeah, anyway, so I'm going to turn over to my guest here, and he's going to introduce himself in whatever way he wants.
All right, so I'm Ryder, and I'm transmasculine, go by he, him pronouns.
All right. So are you medically transitioning, or is this more of a social transitioning?
I have socially transitioned. I've partially medically transitioned, but I'm good where I am. But I'm out just about everywhere, and so.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before we actually recorded this interview another time, but unfortunately there was a lot of insect noise. We did it outside, and I couldn't use a recording. That's one of the things about trying to do these interviews, is that sometimes it's hard to find an actual place to do it. And also I have a dog, so that's another complicating factor. So it's great that we're in this church. You're a member here, right?
I am.
Yeah. And would you, I'm imagining that this is a welcoming and affirming kind of church.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this church is very welcoming. It's the East Derry First Parish Congregational Church.
That's a long name.
In Derry, New Hampshire. Yep, it is. It's actually pretty cool. Our pastor is, well, her and her wife are very active in the church, and her wife's very active in the town, and they do a lot of events.
This is a tiny town. I was driving around, and I was like, wow. Maybe I couldn't. It seems kind of woodsy, so maybe I wasn't really understanding where the town started or something.
It's woodsy. It stretches. I live in the next town over, which is just residential. So there's stores here. It's bigger.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we were talking before that you had kind of in the previous interview, that you had kind of a complicated process of coming out. Do you want to maybe talk about that again?
Yeah. So I wasn't quite sure of the vocabulary to use to figure out quite where I fit in, or where I felt, or understanding what I felt. So I went as genderqueer for many years.
And what time period was this?
So from like 2005 to well, for like 10, 15 years. I kind of kept playing back and forth on the, like, should I transition? Should I just stay at genderqueer, and where I felt I was at?
Yeah.
I was also married at the time.
It seems like genderqueer used to be used a lot more. It's much less used now. I think people more often say non-binary.
Yeah. The vocabulary's changed a bit.
Yeah.
But
I like genderqueer. I think it's kind of fun.
I like it. I felt like it was kind of like taking back the word a bit. But there's definitely a lot more vocabulary and acceptance, and not just pink and blue.
Right.
Well, it is still pink and blue, but but yeah. So it was kind of
there's a light pink and a light blue.
Exactly. I am there should be more than even non-binary. It's still not the two.
There's all kinds of flags now. There's all kinds of them now.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, transitioning was 2 steps forward, 3 steps back for multiple years, trying to get people on board, and
your family and
at first, my family was like, dead set against it, but not in a we're going to disown you way, just they didn't understand way. Over the time, they kind of opened up to it, and then it was, well, why make things more difficult on you?
Did you identify as maybe a lesbian before, or do you come more from a straight community?
No, I did identify as a lesbian before.
Okay. Were they accepting of that?
Not at first, but a lot quicker.
Okay.
I wasn't quite living around with family during that transition, so it was kind of like I went away, came back, and whatever awkwardness had gone away.
Okay.
And then, you know, my family started having friends here and there and know more people, and then makes it a little easier. The more you see, the more you know. Mm-hmm. So, and yeah, at first, like, my family was totally okay with me being gay, but then they weren't quite okay with, you know, the wearing guy clothes. And then they actually were more supportive when I was kind of going back and forth, but other than just saying not make things more difficult, not realizing how difficult internally it was before making that final choice.
You hadn't talked to them much about it?
No, anytime I'd kind of bring it up to kind of like check in to see where we're at, if I would have support or whatnot. I wasn't worried that they would kind of like disown me. They're not that type of family. It's just needing someone, you know, needing support, needing, you know, someone there. So, and I mean, there's a difference of, you know, saying we're still your family and, you know, going to pride parades with you.
Right.
So,
yeah. But that does happen. I mean, one of the best contingents of pride parades is often PFLAG, which is a lot of parents that come out with their LGBT, you know, sons and daughters and non-binary and trans.
Yeah, and a lot more people are joining but I also find that as things are becoming more acceptable, I find that some people, I want to say, like, hey, go join this, you might learn something, whereas they might feel they already know just from culture wise. I'm kind of seeing like another swing, but
can you explain that more?
So I would love, I mean, my mom's supportive, and I would love her to join PFLAG and to learn more, you know, but I'm speaking for her, not not as her, but I kind of get the impression where it's like, well, been your mom this whole time. No, you know, we're still doing this, and like it's not new anymore. So she might feel that like there's nothing to learn, rather than understand like what comes with community and fellowship and whatnot.
So she doesn't want to be further involved. She wants it just to be her process.
No. I'm speculating.
Okay.
We've talked about her joining something like that, and she just hasn't made that step. She's not against it. Just, you know, it's not new anymore. So I feel like for people that might not know how to accept, it's a great way to go and get resources and whatnot. But she is accepting and whatnot. She just isn't a member of that.
Okay. So do you think that she's fully accepting of you now, then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she actually made a comment, or has made many times, that since transitioning that I've become more of myself and less moody or grouchy or always being on edge type of thing. So
awesome. That's great. I must say, our last interview, I didn't get a good look at your facial hair. I'm very impressed with it because it's so dark.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just trimmed it. So.
Mine is so light that it really takes a lot to make it. I just trimmed it, by the way. It was a full beard. I got it ingrown hair, so I was just like, oh, I need to trim it down. But I'm always impressed with people who have such dark facial hair, because you just have a little bit and it looks so good, you know?
I got some grays going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Me too. Mine isn't turning gray, but it's turning white. You know what I noticed, too, the other day is since I trimmed it down and I can see like some individual hairs over here, I actually have a few black hairs in here. I had no idea. It's kind of it's a real mix.
But even someone with dark hair, every once in a while you'll see the one or two that is like way darker than the rest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's weird.
Huh. Like instead of a dark brown, it's like a jet black or something. Oh, okay. I find that my white hair is a different like texture, and Like it's very straight. It's
Yeah.
almost like head hair.
I feel like my white hairs are more grainy.
Grainy. Oh yeah, coarse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, me
of course.
too.
But
My when I was younger and I had a full beard, it was so soft. Like people would, women, women I was dating would touch my beard. You know, very very nice. I love that, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's so soft." Yeah, it's so nice. It's a little coarser now, but it's still pretty nice. Still pretty nice.
at least yours, because it's lighter, it kind of blends more.
Oh,
Whereas like my
yes.
hair is so dark that people think there's something on me or like
Oh, I see.
not a bug, but like lint
Like
or something. And I'm
smudged or
like,
something?
well, they're like, oh, you have a lint in your, no, that one's there.
Yeah.
So
I know a long time ago when people around me were experimenting with how to put facial hair on, kind of before transition, like kind of a drag thing or just playing around, is they would burn corks and then kind of press the ash on their face.
okay.
Yeah.
Now if it's symmetrical, it's probably not real.
Yeah, that's true. That's true if it's symmetrical. So is yours like asymmetrical?
Oh, right side total.
Okay.
Nothing on the left side.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, even though I have a full, in quotes, beard, actually there's a couple spots here where it's a lot thinner. So when it's short, it's much more recognizable. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what grows here in 2 days takes 2-3 weeks here, and then still not as much.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's chest, like whole right side of the body.
Interesting.
Yep. I'm
Huh.
special.
Yeah, you actually could be. There's all kinds of genetic things that sometimes people have. Like sometimes parts of their body or have different genetics than the other part. It's true. It's true. What else? So at some point you made a decision though to
Move
come
forward.
back to move forward. What was that like? Because
Yeah.
you had felt some resistance and you didn't have any support, and then
Right.
you did.
So, years went by, and it was actually one of the things that kept me from transitioning is I had a professor in college that said if I ever wanted to teach in New Hampshire, then I should knock it off.
Oh, really?
Yep. So I did knock it
Oh.
off for many years and lived in discomfort. And well, then I proved her wrong.
Did you need this person for some reason, like for recommendations?
Nope,
or-
I didn't need her for recommendations or anything. She was just one of the professors that I had at one point. So,
Wow.
but I took what she said, and actually that made me feel so out of place for so long that it kind of kept me back.
Yeah.
Rather than once
Yeah.
I moved forward, it was just more like me being me, and things became a lot easier.
Did you? So for me, since my parents are teachers, and a lot of my extended family has been teachers, I take what teachers say or have said in my life very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a deeply emotional thing for me sometimes. Is that kind of like how you were taking it, like more seriously than what other people would say to you, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, I was weighing in, multiple negative things, but I
Yeah.
definitely took to heart her words.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah, that's hard when somebody's in like a mentor role and they don't support you actually.
Yeah, but when starting to teach and whatnot, and not like keeping that part of me back, I wasn't putting myself forward. Like I wasn't trying my best. I wasn't comfortable. It was always like an extra set of bags weighing me down. So
Yeah. And then, speaking of that, what is your teaching specialty?
So I was teaching 5th grade, and I'm trained I'm trained in crisis de-escalation, but also we focused on social emotional learning and teaching students how to understand their emotions, regulate their emotions, and kind of process them so that they can learn without being held down by all the chaos of the world.
Is this what people would call special education?
Nope, that was
Okay.
that was general ed. So
Okay. Why? I've never heard of this being just part of a regular curriculum and not being special ed. How is that distinguished?
So it's not used at like everywhere, but my district really took on it because there's so many things where kids are having so many more issues of exploding, and instead of people saying this is just how kids
Impulsivity.
are, impulsivity,
Okay.
but like instead of just saying this is how kids are, and more kids are in this category, they're trying to be, proactive instead of reactive, and
Right.
instead of having kids having outbursts and getting suspended from school and whatnot,
Instead
create
of pathologizing it too.
right. So creating the mindset and the giving them the tools to be more successful, and
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And this is public school?
yes,
Wow, that's amazing.
yep,
I mean, that's really proactive.
Yep.
I mean, usually kids are separated, or if they aren't separated, then they have like an extra help, which is great. But still, even with that extra help, there's some separation between them and the rest of the class.
yeah, not well, any child can go through a difficult time or whatnot. So giving them the tools to deal with, otherwise we'd have so many more students needing
Yeah.
help. So it's better to,
Do you think that there's more of a need for this, or that teachers like yourself are just addressing it in a more humane way?
both, but there's definitely more of a need for it.
Why do you think that
so
is?
parents are beyond stressed with their jobs or whatnot. They're less active in the kids' lives. I'm not saying every parent, but we're seeing it more and more, where kids being raised by
These are all generalizations.
generalizations completely. Kids in split homes, or kids before and after the whole COVID epidemic have dealt with more trauma than we've seen in the past, or
So COVID did damage, basically.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Oh, definitely. Yep. And then, there's always events or whatnot that affect students. And so whether their parents are divorced, or if they experience a loss, or if they have special needs or something, every child needs different tools to make them successful. But instead of only having tools for when like a crisis happens, you kind of have them already have the skills to cope with, so that when something comes up, they know how to adapt to it. And it also changes the vocabulary that they use. You can do check-ins and say like, where are you at? And by doing that, I've actually learned a lot about myself. So to be able to say like, before this happens, I start to notice I'm getting a headache before I get irritable. Right. So then I start focusing on that. And then when that starts to happen, I change my behavior so that the next thing doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So by focusing on it and becoming aware of it, you can then identify it and change it.
Yeah, this is a very simplistic example, but a friend of mine posted online once, like kind of a checklist. Like if you're feeling irritable, okay, did you eat? Do you need a nap? Do you need to like take a break? Things that you just go through that maybe you just kind of blipped over and just didn't notice because you're too busy or something like that.
And that's the thing. People, everyone says, take care of yourself or whatnot, but we're in such a busy society and world or whatnot that you go and go and go until you're in burnout, until your body is physically telling you like you're sick, you need to take time off, and then we still don't.
And that's classic too, I gotta say, for activists as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and people in healing professions as well. They'll burn themselves out.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just giving yourselves the tools to see the signs before it gets to a burnout level or whatnot, and then you actually have to listen to it too.
Well, that's great. You're giving these kids like kind of like this baseline of skills where they can regulate themselves, instead of there being like an emergency and you guys have to come in and punish and make it like a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And in teaching that, if you also use yourself as an example at an age appropriate level, kids need to understand that you're human too. And by saying, this is a sign that my anxiety is getting high, and to use it as an example to whether they may or may not relate to it, not only does it help them then expand their own, but I've had some students come up and, just little known things of me sharing like, before I get a headache, this might happen, or if I'm tapping my foot, I might be a little anxious. And nothing it's noticeable by all, but I've had like one or two students who themselves are very anxious come up and say, my anxiety is a little high, and I've noticed that your foot's tapping, so I'm wondering if yours is too. You think maybe we can shut the light off? Things like that. Well, they'll make connections.
Cool. Yep. So. That means they're also taking care of you. That's great. That's great.
They tone in.
Yeah, that's sweet. I love that too because it shows so much intelligence. That's great.
Yeah, most people forget that kids just want to be seen and heard just like the rest of us. So yeah, they're tiny humans, but they are still human, and so
yeah. I was once hanging out with a little girl. Her name was Lilith. I was babysitting her for her mom while she was at work, and we would go to the library a lot because she mostly spent her time with a lot of adults. And the library was great because there was a whole bunch of kids who had like this area where they could look at books, comic books. They could also color and that sort of thing. And so since she didn't have a lot of contact with other kids, she didn't know the lessons about sharing and, not pushing and not pulling and that sort of thing. And this other little girl who had a lot more support in her life and who had been around a lot of other kids turned around to me at some point and she asked me why my friend Lilith wasn't sharing, like, why she wasn't playing, and I just thought that was so insightful for like a 4-year-old. She was kind of empathizing with this other little girl who just didn't know how to do it.
And that's great that she was able to question it and ask that. My niece was on the other side of that, where she's 4 and she, because of COVID and whatnot, has never had a preschool experience or whatnot.
Yes. Yeah, that's the damage, right?
Yeah. So, my sister over and over again tells her, you need to share, and she'll say that what she's sharing, but she's never seen it actually happen in work.
Right.
So, she'll be around another kid and she'll be yelling at them that they need to share, not realizing that means she needs to give them a turn too.
Yes.
She thinks that sharing is she gets it when she wants because she hasn't, they've talked about it
like
and whatnot,
a demand,
but she hasn't seen it applied. So, a 4-year-old's mind, you can talk about it all you want, but without putting it into action or showing examples of it, and that's one of the things that I say you always show by example. Like, you don't hold expectations that you're not willing to do yourself, and it's because they learn from that.
So. Yeah. So. Wow. That's deep. I love it that you're doing that work. And so it sounds like, too, you were like a teacher this whole time, that you're going through kind of these personal processes. What was that like?
Yeah, yep, I was teaching the whole time I transitioned, and that was excellent, actually. It was fine. Just like family, they said that I became more myself and more comfortable and confident.
Coworkers and...
Yep, coworkers and whatnot. I had multiple transgender students over the years, and the year before COVID, I had a transgender student in my class, and she had transitioned in like 1st or 2nd grade, so her classmates were...
You're talking about social transitioning.
Yes. Yep. So her classmates had just been accustomed to that, and that's just how life is. And we did change it in the school so that the bathrooms were non-binary and whatnot. It was just bathrooms.
Yeah.
But so by the time I had them in 5th grade, I had a group of her friends, or just classmates. I'm not sure if they're actually her friends, but a bunch of her classmates sit me down and tell me that it's okay if I'm transgender and that I need to think about it myself and accept myself.
They were taking care of you.
Yes.
That's lovely.
Yep.
That's so great.
So, yep. They told me they think I might be. so.
Wow.
Yep.
They're more savvy than we are.
I know.
I love it.
Yep. So I got the talk from 5th graders.
Wow, 5th graders too. That's kind of when they're starting to be a little bit more rambunctious as well,
It's a fun age.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah, so...
Luckily, I did transition during COVID, so I just had a sore throat for a really long time.
Oh, okay. And this was over Zoom, I guess,
Nope,
right?
nope, we were in person.
Oh, you were in person.
Yep,
Okay.
and I was open about it, too. It's just, not all connections are made.
Did your classes never shut down here in New Hampshire?
Only right at the very beginning, when things just kind of...
Like March, April, May?
Yep, we started right up in person the whole time. Yep.
Yeah.
We did hybrid, but we were in person the whole time.
What was that like here? Because in Fairbanks, so I was living in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is in the interior of Alaska. It's 40,000 people up there. There's some poverty there's people living in dry cabins and without much money and that sort of thing. And they're very private about it, very prideful. But when COVID happened and there were a lot of shutdowns and the schools were shutting down, they shut down meal programs as well. And there was no resources. And some local businesses actually were offering food for them if they would show up, which was great.
Yeah, we did have, I'm not sure how soon it started, but they did start a meal delivery program or certain days where you can go and get so many meals.
Okay. Yeah.
At certain locations.
Yeah, eventually they did that in Fairbanks too. Like they would have the school buses out and they would have some of the drivers and people involved with that giving away meals, kind of en masse, instead of going into the building, which I'm not quite sure what the difference is. But maybe it's movement and traffic.
Yeah, and I think because they didn't quite know what was going on at the very beginning, like it was at least for us, it was a no-go in the buildings for anyone. Like we weren't even allowed to go back in to get our own stuff. So
yeah, I kind of had to. I was at the University of Alaska, and I had to kind of sneak in to get into my office to get my stuff. It was a little weird.
Yeah. It was frightening when things first shut down, not just because we didn't know what to expect, but because we didn't have anything in place for going remote like that. That last few months, I had students that I just didn't see again. And once we did start going online, it was optional at that first part. And a lot of parents said, like, nope, they're not having their kids do it. And,
why is that?
Because it took us a while to get going. No, they would have had it provided for. Just some parents didn't want that in the house or whatnot. And I think everyone thought it would be over a lot sooner than it was. So, by the next year when it started up, it was mandatory, and that's just how school was then. But at that point, it wasn't. So I had some students that I just didn't see again, or we had them do assignments. And at that point, some of them were, helping take care of their siblings. And so I had some parents say, it's more important that they're helping with the laundry and the dishes right now than that. And, you had to kind of do priorities. And some of it, of course, some of the kids that you don't see again are the ones that really worry you because they're the ones you want to see.
When you said that, that kind of worried me, actually. That doing the dishes is more important than getting an education. That doesn't seem right.
And when we did start, like the next year, you could do hybrid, you could do remote or in person. At first it started 2 hybrid sections, and they would kind of rotate.
What do you mean hybrid?
So, like this group would be in school Monday and Tuesday, and home the rest of the week. Wednesday, everyone would be home while the school was cleaned. The next group would be home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and in school Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
So it kind of rotated, so things would be cleaned. As a teacher, I was there every day but Wednesday at the beginning. Then we went to being in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and only being home Wednesday for the building to be cleaned. So it was like a slow transition back. But so at least for 5th grade, we did cohorts. So instead of having a general ed teacher, you were in a cohort. And so it really depended on the days that you were going to be in or not. And as we slowly transitioned to being in school longer, it went to being everyone but the remote students would be in. And we were in a little bit more and a little bit more. But then students were changing the cohorts based on, some parents didn't want to come back in that much or whatnot. So, and there's definitely a difference between the students that came back earlier than the students that came back later, especially the following year, trying to blend it all together. There's a huge difference. Did you see some
delay? Yeah.
Yep. And, the way that we did things had to change. Like with testing and whatnot, we had a separate at-home one than in school, and it's hard to line it up and to monitor progress, because if you're doing something over a computer screen, it is going to be different than in person. So
I find it very difficult to take classes like online and stuff. I really need a lot of engagement and being able to see body language and having being part of actual discussions, because I find the Zoom thing is weird because I think it makes it easier for some people to dominate a conversation if you're not actually in the same room with them.
And it's also way easier to get distracted, to look like you're paying attention when you're
Right.
not. I mean, it's not,
Right.
it doesn't take long to figure out
Yeah.
how to get around that.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I was getting my master's, we started in person. We were doing what's also called a cohort between my district and the university nearby.
Sure.
And so
That's usual. That's
yeah.
usually, yeah.
So we started that in person, and then COVID happened, so we switched to Zoom. And same thing as the kids. Like, I found that I don't read well on the computer, and being on the computer that much, I started getting more migraines
Yeah.
and more sensitive to light, and
Right.
burning out a lot quicker, and it's just too much stimulation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I had trouble as well. I had more trouble with connectivity though, because where I was living there was no internet, because I was living in a dry cabin, and there was just no cable out there. Also, my cell service was really spotty out there too, so it was kind of, I had to drive in, and the university wasn't piping Wi-Fi into the parking lots at this point either, so I had to drive in and park in McDonald's parking lot and try to try to park their Wi-Fi. It was,
while you're trying not to be around people.
and while I'm trying to teach a class in ethics, like help out in class in ethics and as a teaching assistant, and it was just awful. Luckily, my students though, that I was helping out with in this class, they pretty much taught themselves, which was great. Anyway, I mean, I think it affected a lot of people.
And there have been some
showed
good
limitations.
Yeah. We have had some changes since then. I mean, this area is not. The education systems around here have a little bit more to work with. So all of our students had.
Do you mean money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All of our students had their own Chromebooks and stuff that would usually be left at school, but for all of this transitions and whatnot, they were able to take them home.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And some things going forward, because before we had what's called blizzard bag days, and this was for New England because we have snow days.
Yeah.
And so instead of missing so much school for snow, where we'd have to be in school late into July when we don't have ACs in our schools, they started a program called blizzard bag days. So you have 5 days that you would take work home, and they would say this is a blizzard bag day. So on a snow day, you stay home and you do work that day, and then you bring the work in the next school day. So we were able to take that and kind of morph the two. So when we went to at-home teaching, we had like already a little step up because we were used to doing that. But now moving forward, then blizzard bag days, it's kind of like, well, any snow day, pretty much where there is internet, any snow day that like trees aren't down or power's not down, then they became work days.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys get those really heavy, like nor'easter, ice storm kind of things going on?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I was just in Newton, which is a suburban community outside of Boston, and it was a rainstorm, and it was like sheeting rain, where it's like shh, coming down like that. And I didn't even notice till afterwards. I was trying to take a little video of it, but there was actually hail in it. I didn't even notice.
If you watch the ground, it bounces.
Yeah, that's what I noticed in the video. I was like, oh, there was hail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Anyway, oops, sorry, we're shaking this.
No, it's the dog.
Oh, I should probably move him. Yeah, let me move him. Anyway, so we needed a little break. My dog needed to go out, and while we were outside, I noticed how cool the backyard is here. If I were a kid, I would have loved to have gone to church to play back there. There's like a huge sandbox back there, and I actually saw a rabbit back there that looked like a cartoon rabbit. Like it had a fluffy little tail.
But live.
Yeah. And it was like bouncing like they do in the cartoons. Yeah, that was pretty wild. My dog really loves rabbits. Anyway, so yeah, you transitioned while you were teaching, and let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. So when I transitioned, I am one of those real classy people that just, say, hey, this is what we're doing. So I went, I spoke to
But you seem really honest and forthright, Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean is I went to I talked to my family and friends first, of course. And I went to my principal and vice principal and told them, and they were on board. And I was like, I'm going to be going through this process, and then by so I'm going to be transitioning throughout the rest of this year, and then starting the following school year completely, like, transitioned.
I sometimes ask this just because I just wonder what gets people there. So you had this really long process. Is quite drawn out, which everybody's process is different. Some people are very fast, some people are longer. Was there like a moment where you were like, I just have to do this? I can't.
Yeah. So actually, the last 2 years was me going more like, this, I gotta do this, like, and trying to figure out like what that would look like.
Okay.
Then I got to a point where I was like, it doesn't matter if it makes things more difficult. Like, I'm so miserable now, like, I can't take how horrible I feel inside. So if I have to go through a period of making things more difficult, then I'm going to do it, because I was so miserable that I couldn't see myself doing that.
Are you talking about like that early phase of physical transitioning where people are a little bit awkward looking? Or?
No, I mean, when people say to make things more difficult, I think that they didn't fully understand a trans person's desire or feeling of inadequacy. And so they just see it as, well, you're fine the way you are, so what, you're a little different. They didn't see it as always being uncomfortable, like never going to the bathroom
like
out in public,
never daily stress,
like the daily stress and anxiety that comes with just existing when you're not feeling the way that you should feel to exist.
Yeah.
So they just saw it as, maybe it would make things more difficult for them. I don't know, as having like a trans kid or whatnot. Maybe they didn't understand what that would look like. But once I decided I can't handle this level of anxiety and stuff anymore, and I'm going to go forward with it. And once I figured out what that would look like, they kind of fell on board. They weren't like, they didn't try to convince me out of it. It was just like, okay, we're doing this. And so for me, it went very quickly because I had spent so much time going over it. Before I even told most people, I had already put my names into the courts, and I actually went back and forth on the name, and I had my grandfather help me finally settle on one. Yeah, and my grandfather, who I never would have thought, was totally on board with it. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
all right, Grandpa.
Right?
Awesome.
Yeah, so, yep, they were all on board, and I went and told the school. It was already, and it was just weird. And I think it was helpful that my district had already had so many trans students and have a large amount of LGBT employers.
Yeah. In fact, your boss, is a lesbian.
No, that's pastor.
Oh, okay.
Not my
boss. Sorry.
Nope.
The pastor of this church is a lesbian.
Yes. They were more than happy and accepting. No, but at work they were fine with it. And so I went and I did like all the paperwork first, and then it was just like my name change came in, my new work ID, like everything was just quick. My insurance card, like it was easy to just get everything switched over. And
so that sounds like it's pretty easy process here in New Hampshire. That's great.
Yeah. And there's resources available that you can go and see, like, what do I have to do? And like, not only is there places that are willing to help you with it, also, it's very helpful when you're making that first step and you need to show that you're having like supportive medical care and whatnot in the transitioning. My doctors and stuff are all fine with it, but some of them just...
Right, because you need papers, like letters saying, yes, this person is what they say they are.
Yep. And so like even there's rules on like what a therapist can or can't do. So like even though they were supportive and supporting me through it, they couldn't go right out and say they think that you would do this. They could just say that they're supporting you in the process of this. So letters saying directly that if you want to have the medically transition or even the name or whatnot, Planned Parenthood helped me out a lot with resources, because not only do they have a lot of information and resources, but they'll go over your medical history and help you make decisions on what's best for you and whatnot. And
that's great, because I've heard that they don't offer like a lot of sort of follow-up care. But at least at the beginning, they go over a lot of your history. That's great.
So they can do both. Like they can do the beginning history and getting you on the next path to go forward.
Yeah.
I wanted to I was ready just to go at that point. So for the first...
Were you suddenly in a hurry?
I was just I spent so mmany years like on the borderline that I was like, nope, we're
No,
going.
no.
We're on here. So like, yeah. So I mean, they got me letters to get like the top surgery done right away and whatnot. But they
great.
also got me
I
not.
didn't know that you could get letters through Planned Parenthood. That's great.
Yep, they did my name change, the top surgery.
Thank you,
and,
Planned Parenthood.
Yes, thank you. I also started testosterone through them before I got switched to a endocrinologist. They got me started. They see you at first, like they see you so many times beforehand, then they get you started. They show you what to do. Then they have you meet monthly, and then you go to 3 months, and then it becomes just as if as going to my endocrinologist, the same maintenance or whatnot.
Yeah. I almost went to Planned Parenthood myself, even though I've been on testosterone for over 22 years. Because I'm moving around, one of the problems is establishing new care somewhere. And so Planned Parenthood is very convenient for that. Luckily, I did get into an actual program, though, but actually that actual program is not that great. And other programs that I've looked up, there's actually 6 to 8 month waiting lists. And some of them are even longer. I've met people who've been on waiting lists for up to a couple years.
And that's why, like, it was a wait to get in to see an endocrinologist and whatnot. So when I was ready and I was like, I'm doing this, like, I didn't want, I understand that not everyone has that ability to just go with it once you make that decision. But I had the opportunity and I did. And there's still, like, I have no problem even going back now if I need to,
To an endocrinologist?
No, I mean, I see an endocrinologist, but I mean, like, if I had to continue with Planned Parenthood, they were great.
Yeah.
They do labs and whatnot too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate them. I have been a little bit critical with them about them in the past, just because I feel like trans people in general, we just have to struggle so much with follow-up healthcare. Like, sometimes we're given that initial prescription, but then continuity of care afterwards and like follow-ups or that sort of thing is very lacking. I feel like that
can be with any doctor.
Yes,
it happens more to trans people because I feel, and I'm speaking generalizing here, that I think we put up our guards to medical people, and so if someone's not hounding us to get double checked, then we kind of step back a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of trauma. Going to the doctor because we're misgendered. Some people force us to do things. Like when I was a teenager, doctors were trying to force me on female hormones, because I was too masculine or something like that.
Yeah. So there's a lot people have to deal with. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that it was easy for you once you decided to go for it.
Yeah. So like I said, it was quick. Well, not quick. I mean, a month or two seems like forever when you're ready to get going, but not years like other people. But I had already done that waiting. So I did that. I changed the name and I did a giant Facebook post to kind of tell the rest of the friends, family, or whatever that I didn't do personally, and I made a comment. I did a really good letter, if I do say so myself, and shared that with all my coworkers and whatnot, and just that was that. And
is it something you shared with your church as well?
I have a lot of my church family on Facebook, so they would have seen that. I had already told some of them ahead of time, and my mom goes here, so. But yeah, there are transgender members at this church as well, so it was support and whatnot.
And is it, what mainline denomination is this part of? Is this UCC?
Yes.
United Church of Christ. Okay,
Yep.
right. Yeah, I was wondering that because of the congregational part. So
that's what I got confused with that.
Yeah.
Last time, but it is. We just got back from the Star Island UCC conference.
Yeah,
so
I love UCC. I've been to some UCC churches before, and they're always great. And there's such a wide variation in like the type of worship. It can feel more sort of ethereal sometimes, but then sometimes it's like hands waving in the air and crying out, and it's kind of a wide spectrum of worship styles. What's it like here?
Here is interesting because you have people. They actually at the service yesterday asked like how many people have been here this long or this long. There are people that have been here over 50 years.
Oh my!
And then there's a good portion of them that have only been here 5 or 6 years. So it's a good blend of, trying to keep to old traditions, but also moving forward. Now, those people that have been here over 50 years are more progressive because some people did leave when, a lesbian pastor took over and some changes happened. And which was interesting, actually. At one point, we had
and that's voted on, I think, by the congregation, right? To accept a new pastor.
And at one point, it was actually my ex-wife and I that started coming here together. And when we started, it was right when this pastor was starting, and the assistant pastor was also lesbian. So it was quite interesting.
All in the family.
Yep. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Family is old gay slang for people who are gay, basically. Like if somebody who is my age or older doesn't want to out somebody, they'll ask them, "Hey, are you family?" Some younger people don't know that though. I actually was doing a food delivery. I'm doing food deliveries to fund my traveling around, which is, I tell you, it's difficult. Hard way to make some money, but I delivered like some pizza or something to a university, and a young trans woman came out to get the order, and I asked her if she was family, and she did not know what I was talking about. She was like, "Oh, are you from here?" Yeah.
Although it is becoming more common for actual family people. People have always said, "Oh, we're blood, we're family." You listen to blood. Well, thank goodness people are starting to take that back and saying, well, no, like just because we share blood does not mean I owe you anything. And so it separates like the generational trauma and stuff. So I know quite a few people who are,
that's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
Like, instead of clinging to biological family that is harmful to you, you create a chosen family.
Yep. And that's what most people say is the chosen family. And and I feel like that
a family from love.
Yeah, but these are people that are choosing to stand by your side, choosing to support you and be there for you, rather than someone that doesn't like you doing it just because you share chromosomes.
Yeah.
So
There's
a lot of talk around people that I'm around about doing, co-living type. Yeah.
Well, I think in terms of survival technique and just being more pro-social and loving towards each other and sharing and also sort of being economical with resources. I think it's a great way to go.
Being back more towards like bartering and like provide for yourself more, but like also what you can do, then you share and
also as people age, they need different things. So that can be not quite a replacement for family, but sort of an augmentation of how we think of like living together. We live in a dominantly individualistic and forced. Everything is forced on us in this culture. So choosing to do something and it being voluntary and mutualistic, and off of a cash system, maybe a little bit more. That's very radical. Very radical.
So my family was blessed because, another family's misfortune, but my mother's family divorced when she was very young. So she had a stepmom and dad and siblings, and mom and stepdad and siblings. And my grandmother, who was one of the most amazing people ever in my life, but she took on a family as a family and took on everyone, even the ex-wife's new children and all that. We were all together. So I have cousins over here that aren't related to cousins over here, but we were all raised together. We had a family camp that was just, everyone was invited. So we were all at Christmas.
She was everybody's granny. Yeah,
she was. Yep. And not only is she not biologically related to me, she's not biologically related to my other cousins who, even by marriage, but it was all like she was the matriarch, and there was no anything. And it was also, if I was in an argument with my mom, doesn't matter. It was, of course, you don't speak to your mom that way, but she would tell my mom, "You go off too. Like, Grandma has spoken. You go off, and I'll speak to you both when I'm ready."
Wow.
And
So
it was
a
just
mediator too.
we were raised. Yeah, so we were raised that, like, it wasn't just your mom, and my mom wouldn't have spoken to her. This was Grandma, and like, so there were 10 of them, my mom and step siblings and half siblings and all of that, and they were always civil. So my mom's mom and my mom's stepmom, whose birthday was the same day, got along fine. I don't know if it was from day one, but they created a relationship where everyone was welcome with everyone. And
wow, that's a really large extended family right now. Usually, I mean, kind of historically or depending on ethnicity, sometimes there's still, sort of extended family connections, but it's becoming less and less common.
No, we were really blessed, and it was a splendid family, and that was just
wow.
So when other people are now,
usually that's so uncomfortable.
Well, now people are taking on that, like, the chosen family, but to me, like, so my father's my adoptive father, and I'm like, so all I've ever known is the chosen family rhetoric. So and even like going through my divorce or whatnot, like, my in-laws were always invited to my grandparents, or my parents separated and my adoptive father was always welcomed at my grandparents' house. Like, it was just everyone was welcomed.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I had kind of the opposite experience. It was a very insular nuclear family, and my parents stayed together for the children. even though it was a terrible relationship and they did not work well on it, and so we all kind of scattered. So I am forever in search for or avoidance of family.
Now I have so many people that end up being family, and I just saw you at Dunkin's. Why are you at my family reunion? Type thing. But
okay.
But
what I do is I constantly talk to strangers.
Yeah, but for me they end up being related.
Okay.
No, but
well, if you're from a small town, sometimes it happens. No.
But even it wasn't even just about like the blended family part. Like, friends of friends. Like, once you were invited in, you were family. It didn't matter. It extended out.
Sure.
And it even my great grandmother, her mother, she lived to be she died right before her 103rd birthday, and I remember around the time I was first getting married, like, she would refer to my wife as my friend, and my grandmother had said something at one point about, like, her being older and just giving it time. Well, my great grandmother came right up and shared a story about, and I think last time we talked about the power of stories, but she shared a story that when she was in her 20s and she was adamant that she was going to work, so she worked in a shoe factory, and there was one.
What era was that?
So she was born in 1915, I want to say.
So pretty early, like the 30s.
Yep.
That's pretty early, because really women didn't go into the workplace until the World War.
Yep.
Yeah.
So so she told me the story, and she could have been a little later than 20s, but
actually, I'm going to amend that. White women
Yes.
did not go into the workplace.
So that's her story, that there was a African American that started working there and was kind of treated poorly from the rest of the workers, and she became a nail in their side about treating him differently. And of course, then she was a woman that was then, but she made a point to say that, like, you always do what's right, even when circumstances might be uncomfortable or whatnot. So she would use her stories like that as lessons to us, to not only show us that she understood and cared, but that you do what's right regardless.
Even though it's not the same situation, it's the same kind of feeling. Yeah, exactly.
So.
Wow, that's cool. You know what I love too, that I've also seen and I slightly experienced, is some people will sort of adopt people into families, whether it's queer or straight, it doesn't really matter, as adults a little bit, like if they're poor or something like that, or if they need some support. I've definitely had that in my life, where some people have kind of taken me in occasionally, which I've always greatly appreciated. Yeah.
I have lots of nieces and nephews, and I only have one biological nephew. But they're all same thing. I've grown up with them my whole life. I was taken in. They're, you know, part of my life, and I'm uncle. And
wow.
Yep.
Wow. So you're doing it too. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah. It's your turn. I always wonder what my turn is. What am I giving back? I have no idea. I have tutored a lot of people in mathematics, though. I feel like that's pretty good contribution to the world.
I'm at a pivotal point.
Really?
I'm very active in my, or try to be in my nieces and nephews' lives, because I understand that, you know, if you can't just say, hey, they're your niece and nephew, but you actually have to take a part in their life to earn that. But I was telling you, you know, I used to teach, and I'm not teaching right now.
Yeah.
And I'm artistic.
Oh, I didn't realize that you were teaching.
I'm not teaching right now.
Okay.
I am artistic, and I want to get back more into the advocating and educating and taking a step away. Public education has kind of wrapped up in some politics, and I know it's been like that for a while and whatnot, but I want to.
Are you talking about the school board issues that are kind of happening across the country?
Yeah.
Like CRT and...
Just, there's a lot going on, and you're not really... The teachers aren't necessarily spending their time with the kids as much as we'd hope.
Okay.
So I want to do more... before teaching, I did a lot of advocacy work, so I want to get more into that, whether it's for LGBT youth or just at-risk youth.
Are you looking to kind of change careers and become like more of an advocate kind of person? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think you do that anyway. Yeah.
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 I kind of want to get back to that. I feel that, to be honest, I love doing that, but I've realized too that once I started really passing, I kind of had such relief of like not having to live with that anxiety that I forgot like how many people do still live in that anxiety.
Right.
And so I want to help not just other people, because, you know, there's the spectrum, but I want words like they, them to be, like the pronouns to be more accepted. And so I want to get back into
if you
doing
do,
things.
If you do activism, you do have to actually be focused. You know, it's kind of like going to graduate school. Like you can't just spread yourself out doing everything. Yeah. You do have to have a focus.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But
no, it sounds like you're taking on that sort of non-binary identity and language issues.
That's not my like forefront. That's just a goal that I want. I want to see more things embrace it and whatnot.
And you're talking about like at the institutional level, like with education, or
no? I just mean like, I don't know, in general. Right now, I'm gonna be doing some leadership type programs. I did get my master's in leadership, in education leadership, but
you could go for like being a superintendent kind of person.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
Do you want to teach teachers? Possibly? No. Okay.
I connect really well with youth.
Okay.
And as I said before, that I know that kids just want to be seen and heard. I have, I'm not going to say gift, but I have not found many students that I don't connect with in a way that they feel comfortable enough to coming to me if they need something.
No, I think that is a gift. Yeah.
So last time we chatted, I talked that my ultimate dream is to open a homeless LGBT youth center in this area. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's definitely needed. And before I get to that, I want to just do more programs and more activities.
Is this area kind of, I mean, there's Boston, which is the big city, but is this area for this this general region kind of the place where LGBT youth would come?
Yeah, well, so the cities around here that are pretty much the cities that New Hampshire has.
Yeah.
So Nashua, Portsmouth, the Seacoast region, those are like the gay resource areas. Manchester.
Because this state is a real mixed bag. It's very left and very right. Yeah. There's not a lot in between.
Right. So if you go up north, it's a whole different ball game. If you go that way, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
But the major areas that you would go to for support is in this area, but we don't have something kind of bridging the gaps. We've got some, youth support groups.
Yeah.
And whatnot. We do a PFLAG and stuff. And I'm in a transgender therapy group and stuff. But there needs to be more of a connection and kind of.
But also just material resources like food
Right.
and clothing and all that stuff is so important. And navigating that through like regular social services is really, it can be very tough
Right.
for somebody in the LGBT community.
Yeah. I did create a group on Facebook called New Hampshire's LGBT advocators and educators. And I have a lot of parents from like past students and stuff on there, and then even people that I had in my life that I didn't know had like questioning children, where they came on to ask questions. So it's nice because then they can not quite so be as open as like actually going to a PFLAG yet, like they're not there yet, but can start asking questions that don't put it on the kids, so that they can then come back and have a conversation without having that not understanding being the front part.
Right.
So I've had some good
So
conversations
it's almost
and
like
resources.
you're counseling the community in a way. Yeah.
A bit, yeah. And the group does offer like mentorship and whatnot through there. And mostly right now it's a way that people come on for connections or they ask for resources. I go back, look at resources I've been connected with or the people that I'm connected with, and then get back to them. So.
Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking that there's a university in Utah that people who have questions can send the university, and people at their LGBT center can answer them, and it's anonymous, which is great.
That is awesome.
Because if people are, scared to ask questions, it's really nice to be able to be anonymous.
Yeah, and these parents that are now supporting their children in ways that is just amazing. What people might not realize is when you first get the information, of course, whether it's what you're for or what don't know about or whatnot, the way you react tells the person sharing a lot. So by them going off and finding information elsewhere to take back to have a conversation with their kids, rather than just having these questions and the kid's overwhelmed or whatnot.
Right. And the kids might not even know either.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually, if the kids are just kind of speculating or just kind of trying to share how they're feeling, you don't want to be met with any harsh words. So I'm finding that having a spot for the parents,
deep in.
it does.
You
like that
remember it.
comment from my teacher that stopped me for 12 years.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Which during that time that I was in undergrad over in Keene State, I was the president of our Pride group, and then I started a living learning community. So it's kind of like you got...
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
Yeah.
When we were talking before, I was like, wow, you do a lot. For somebody who's kind of shy,
I am shy.
He's always like the leader of some group. He's like...
None of those groups that I choose, I just kind of got...
What is the next group you're going to lead?
That's what my next project is.